I'd love for you to tell us a little bit more about yourself and what's the story that led you to where you're at today.
It's a question that I have given some thought to, because what is the story? And I don't think it is any one story. I think it's a combination of life experiences, some success, trials and tribulations. And in those thoughts, I thought I'd share something with you that not a lot of people know about me. In fact, most people don't know. And that is, there's a part of the story that has been a big part of my life. And that is that I've lived as a product of societal expectation in my journey. And you would say, we live in 2022. How is this possible? I was born in the 60s, and I thought I would actually talk to this. So historically, society had this expectation of how my gender should behave in the workplace, what characteristics we should display. And I've struggled in the business arena with this expectation. It led me to think I had two personalities with opposing, contrasting characteristics. Because on the one side, I am a very nurturing, caring woman, and on the other side, I have characteristics in that I can be assertive, I can speak with authority and purpose, I'm confident, I think I have mental agility. But these two elements really led me through a lot of my life, a long part, to think that I had a split personality, because they're very paradoxical to what historical society expectation is of what a woman looks like in the working world. And because this war has been happening in my head, I've really struggled with authenticity. And I mean, how can you have that when you've got an inner conflict? So as I've grown older and I think wiser, I've realized that my younger self struggled with choosing between one of the two. And it really took me years to learn that I could merge the two, have both, be both. And that if I make a really tough or hard business decision that's not well received, it doesn't obviate me as a carer. But I've had times in my life where I've really been torn in decision making between the carer, the nurturer, the protector, and quite a tough businesswoman at times. And I've often got it wrong, and it's made me feel truly inauthentic. And how sad is that? Because it's an absolute waste of time with me fighting with this inner self. So finally, when I understood this push-pull and that I was really able to be my instinctive self with a stronger self, it took a long time to break that social mindset in my head, and it held me back. And the self-awareness, when it came, allowed me to feel that it was a gift that set the tone for the journey of my last 8 years, which is really becoming immersed in the world of working with women in business. So pushing that expectation aside was really liberating, and knowing myself has become so fulfilling and really given me a space and a place in the business world. And it's really a space where I'm able to drive my agenda in the world of women of business, to guide them through soft, through hard, knowing that a high percentage of women actually probably have felt the same way, but don't often speak about it, because we live in 2022, where if you had to ask a Gen Zer this, for instance, they wouldn't know what I was speaking about.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. It sounds like what you're saying is you're much more in alignment and integrity with who you really are now. And I would imagine that that's giving you a lot more power in what you're doing. You're probably a lot more effective, but it's probably also been a lot more fulfilling. So maybe speak a little bit to, how that's impacting what you're doing today. Maybe give us a little more insight into what are you doing today, just so we can kind of juxtapose, the real you now, like the one person, which I always say we're one person. We're not who we are at, in personal and who we are in business. We're one person. We sometimes have to take on different identities in those roles, but at the end of the day, there's just one me. Maybe give us a little bit more insight into like what impact has that had on you, personally and in what you're doing today.
So my business is really threefold. I work with excos and management in strategy work and long-term goal measurement and really making it very practical. I also head up a Women Presidents Organization in South Africa, which is known as WPO.
Yeah.
And then I founded an organization called Women in Business Advisory, which is known as WiBA, because I realized that there was a gap in the market for women who were not at WPO level or at IWEC level, as an example. And I think that as women gain more power and influence in the business world, they bring with them something different. They have different thought, they bring fresh ideas, they bring different innovation, and I think it's really necessary. So initially my vision was to help as many businesses as possible to do things better and not make the mistakes that I had made. But from there, it grew that I really wanted to advance and empower in this sector to enhance, women, to help them with their knowledge, help them create opportunities, expose them to thoughts that are cutting edge earlier on, to be fearless, to speak with authority and purpose. And I think essentially just to give voice. And not that we don't have voice, but I think voice that is substantive. So the programs of WPO and WiBA are geared to support in all of these areas, and they enable you to step out of your business and into a place where you work on your business and yourself. And this kind of stepping away is really, I find it really important. I've been doing this for 14 years, and I've seen so often that it's doubly effective if you step away into a support space that shares your business commonality. So WPO is global. I'm growing WiBA to global, and I believe that both these organizations have helped shape my vision and, to be part of something bigger.
That's amazing. You are wearing a lot of leadership hats and very important roles. What are some of the things that you see, the traits that the most successful business leaders have? And I'm intentionally saying leaders, not women leaders, but if you want to distinguish between the two, if you feel there is a distinction, feel free.
I don't think there is a distinction. I really don't. I think there's some common traits. Leaders never stop learning. They know themselves and they know what their shortfalls are and where they need to learn behavior to make up for those shortfalls. They need to have an ability to inspire, provide direction. There are oftentimes they have to really dig deep for courage. Great leaders nurture talent and give strength to people. They're able to self-manage, they plan, they have vision, which really is translated into strategy and goal planning, which is an area that I'm totally passionate about and drive almost on a daily basis. Good leaders seek feedback and they need big chunks of humility. But in order to do all of that and to be a successful leader, I believe you need consistency. So consistency, in my opinion, is really the driver of success. You need to do those things over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So consistency in your dedication to the goals and the focus and staying focused. To achieve success takes sustained effort in doing things routinely and repeatedly. And some of my experience has shown that entrepreneurs do not like routine and they don't like repetitiveness, and that's often a hurdle.
Yeah, no, that's true. Sometimes as entrepreneurs, we tend to go after the exciting, creating something new. But I think there's a distinction between sometimes what a successful entrepreneur looks like, and that often is factoring in that consistency that, it's great to have new ideas, new vision, but without consistent implementation, which is some of the, the more day-to-day, it's the best visions of the world never have a chance of being actually seen. So consistency is a great attribute.
Yeah.
So given how much exposure you have to successful women, whether it's with WiBA or WPO, what is your vision of future women, the future of women leaders?
It's quite difficult to separate out because I'm truly passionate about entrepreneurship and economic empowerment and the contribution of women to economy. I also love how women in general generally embrace and care for their communities. And all of that has really led me to think a lot about how to support women to be included equally in existing markets, but also to be able to create new markets. Something that I spend a lot of time thinking about. I would like women to have meaningful participation in decision making, and that leads to control over their lives and their time, and then they're able to make decisions and choices that improve not only their lives, but their families' lives and then community lives, and to build legacies. So I think it is, for me, the vision for the future is for women to have an increased voice and choice. And you need a lot of things to take you there, but that leads to economy, it leads to communities, and it leads to building great companies.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. What trends are you seeing across the workforce that you think would be valuable to share with other female leaders?
I got to say, I don't really like the word trends because it kind of could be that it's faddish.
Sure.
I kind of like to think of thoughts more as cutting edge concepts or conversations that are happening in commonality throughout the globe. But whatever you call them, it's really important to know about them because your strategy and your business plan should pay attention. And I think my thoughts around this all lead to global things that I read, conversations I'm in touch with. And my thoughts are centered around human capital. So we all know that we're working with a 5-generation workforce at the moment, and each generation has different perspectives due to their age and what they were exposed to in early childhood, kind of formative experiences. And actually, the older generations are starting to leave the workforce, and often at a time in a company where the younger generations are not as ready as they could be to take over from a management experience perspective or necessary skills. So one of the things, you call it a trend, I'm suggesting that we should be thinking about this, is thinking carefully around the values that the older generations leave with and how you can replace these. It also creates a gap in the market. We're constantly hearing about a shortage of supply and demand, and there's many reasons for it. But I do think this is one of those elements. The other thing is that the workforce is really impacted at the moment by the technologies of the fourth industrial revolution, and a lot of special skill is needed, and the workforce is a very changing environment around this. I mean, AI augments workforce. It's something we really need to consider and we need to think about. And I hear often the younger generation talking about how this is a tool to work smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
Other conversations that are really, really prevalent at the moment, hot topics I call them, is disengaged employees. The suggestion is to take the pulse of your workforce and assess engagement, and often, because disengaged employees are really expensive, boomers leaving, but at the same time what is booming is e-commerce, and all generations are easily able to buy online, and people are doing it, it's happening. So there's a real case of thought for, I think, quality content and AI in advertising. Those are conversations I'm hearing. And then the last one I really wanted to mention, it's one everyone is talking about, but ESG as a force for good, it's big conversation. And I'm not going to go deeply into that, but having a long-term sustainability in your strategy and addressing multiple elements, not just what ESG stands for, I think is really important. Those are the things that I'm feeling are, you mentioned trends, so I'm going to say trending.
No, those are great. Those are great. Thank you. So you mentioned a hot topic around disengaged employees. certainly in the US, we have a hot topic around, the quietly quitting epidemic. I don't know how much of a factor that is in your neck of the woods, but I wonder, sometimes if you watch the news or, see all the media that's out there, the story it presents might be more doom and gloom than reality. Like, how do you filter through that to really get at like what's really happening and what really needs leadership attention versus, maybe to your earlier point, using the word trends, like maybe something being more just a trend and like letting it just, run its course without necessarily changing your course? Like, how do you balance between what is systemic and truly needs attention versus what might just be noise that doesn't need to divert you from your overall goals and strategy?
I think it's important to listen to everything that's out there. But I'm an avid news reader. I wake up every morning and probably read 5 or 6 online papers. I read a lot, and because of that, I've really built the ability to read and filter, to consider multiple views, but also to eliminate the fake and take out the drama and make my own assumptions. So I think it is important to know that people talk about things that might not necessarily be on your radar, and to always just have a touch point, even if it's not something you go into deeply, but just to have a touch point. And when you start seeing commonalities of it's being spoken about more, that's where you need to bring it up in your support groups, chat to others about it, read more about it. But I think we need to disseminate there's a lot of fake and a lot of drama.
Yeah.
But I don't think you can discount if it's being said in multiple arenas. You need to listen and learn more. And I must say, I think at WPO, that's something that we really do. We listen to those new things. We hear that term that you mentioned, and we go into it and we talk about it, and whether that be in South Africa or the US, it's happening. So when you go deep into it, you really can you can identify it's happening.
Absolutely. Do you mind sharing with us what some of the news sources you read are every day?
I read the Times, I read Inc., I read Entrepreneur, I read a lot of local newspapers. We've got one that is just crazy amazing. I just love their humor and the way they deal with news. It's called the Daily Maverick. I read a lot of entrepreneurial kind of thing, but at the same time, I'm very interested in what is happening in my country, and I sometimes spend times in bed in the mornings going between anger and laughing at the same time, because when I see what is happening in the rest of the world, we are certainly not we're not alone. It's happening all over.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I've I mentioned I was interviewing Sunita yesterday, and yes, she's the one who nominated me, so she has a special place in my heart. But we were talking about this organization. I've been involved in a lot of, what are typically referred to as global organizations, but this particular organization feels very global to me. Like who's being represented, it's incredible. And the fact that there are so many different countries, ethnicities, you name it, industries, yet what we're all dealing with, discussing, is just very much aligned and familiar. Just feels so amazing and comforting and unifying.
Yeah,
It's really incredible.
Yeah.
So I'd love to get your thoughts on companies that perhaps do not have enough women representing them at the leadership level, at the board level, but maybe like don't want to approach it from like, doing it to fill a quota or to look good, but really want to do it because they believe the benefits are going to get them, where they need to go? Like, what would you say to companies that don't have enough representation on how to go about doing it, why to go about doing it, and how to do it in a way that's very authentic versus, again, like trying to look good or fill a quota so they can say we're diverse, or we can say, hey, look, we have X amount of women, at the leadership level?
Yeah, a lot to say about this.
Say it.
If you're going to do anything at all, it needs to be authentic. So I don't know if you know Humira Kabir. She is a woman that writes a lot on this kind of thing. And a beautiful piece that she wrote, she speaks about businesses that need to be more aware of our beliefs around women and the stereotypes and about defining a gender. And she says that for generations, and it's really interesting because this really resonates with me, for generations, women had to abide by a single story of being nice and warm and nurturing. And it's a 1,000-year-old story, and it fits the societal role of a caretaker as the sole source of meaning for lives of women. And she goes on to say that, change has happened with time, and we need to change our thought pattern around understanding the roles of responsibilities and competencies and contribution of women in the workplace. And in the earlier years, we were traditionally taught to conform, to be modest and agreeable and likable, and to surrender to demands. And in so doing, you've rejected a really important part of yourself and you become a stranger to yourself. So when you enter the competitive and the performance-driven working environment and you use your decisive, assertive, or competent traits, the story doesn't play out. So you're labeled as nasty and aggressive, or an ice queen, or a host of uncomplimentary labels.
Sure.
Because you're assertive or successful, and you get caught in that double bind of likability, and progress is stalled. So that's that paradoxical thing I was talking about earlier on, and it disconnects the woman from authenticity, and it stops them from rising to their full potential. And as a result, organizations suffer. Research shows that diversity at a higher management level has shown huge returns in multiple ways. So the way that I see this is organizations really should have more dialogue around talking about these biases, which are actually largely conscious awareness, where women can air their voice and occupy a place. But, for the authenticity of the organization, they need to be aware of some things. And Humira speaks about this, and she says that females in the workplace, through studies show, get more negative performance reviews with feedback that is a form of personality criticism. And it's shaming to a degree. And shaming is detrimental to a woman who, by nature, she's relational and she'll go the extra mile with approval or receiving praise. So I think organizations should be recognizing women need space or the organization needs space to talk about this perception. It hasn't gone away, even in 2022. And they need to recognize what they are rewarding. They need to think about collaboration and kindness, as well as that a woman can pivot to that other side, and not to be critical that she has these elements.
Sure.
To pay close attention to collaboration and kindness, and think about what you are rewarding. Because through implementing fair policies and inclusive practices and resources and flexible work schedules, it becomes authentic. If you just put things in place that you're talking about and you don't actually do, it doesn't have a trajectory that's going to be sustainable.
Yeah.
Sorry if I sound so passionate on it.
No, it's fantastic. I want you to share with me this writer, and maybe that article. I'd love to learn more about her and read more. It's interesting. I was going to ask you if you've ever heard of an organization called Entrepreneurs Organization.
EO.
EO, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm a member of EO.
Okay, great.
Yeah, actually, our global leadership conference is going to be in Cape Town in 2023, April of 2023.
Oh,
The
awesome.
reason I wanted to mention it is it's still a very small percentage of women, like under 20%. And there's been a major initiative. There's a Women of EO division, and it's created a lot more women and a lot more conversation. But years ago, when I used to attend some of our events before I was, kind of known in the organization, and I would bring my husband, they would always assume he was the
He
member.
was. Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
interesting because at first, and then I, got on the board, and I addressed it, and certainly I addressed it at our chapter level, and we talked about it at a global level, and people took actions. But I also, like, at some point I had a new viewpoint on it, like, rather than the way I initially took it was, I don't know if I was offended, like that might be too strong a word, but there was definitely something there that I didn't like. And as we, progressed, and other women would mention that to me, and there'd be upset, I changed my tune, and I was like, just correct them and move on. Just correct them and move on. Like, yes, it still needs to be addressed. It's being addressed, but rather than feel upset, offended, whatever, like, just correct them very deliberately, very boldly, and move on. And just when you take on kind of that stance versus being at the effect of it, being a victim, it changes everything, because it just, I think it starts to address some of what you're saying. Granted, there's still, listen, some of this has been indoctrinated into all humans, men and women, for many generations. So to think it's just going to, go away like that is, but to take ownership of, like, I'm not going to be offended by it. I'm just going to.
Yeah, I agree about the ownership. Victim mode is not going to achieve anything, and I don't think it's the right approach. So I love what you're saying.
Yeah. So just a couple more questions. One, you've shared so much, and clearly these are topics you're passionate about, and it shows that you're really knowledgeable. But is there anything else, any other things that you haven't had a chance to share that you want to make sure you are able to during the course of this interview?
So I was at a PwC Africa family conference last week, and I heard a conversation around talking about trust, or rather distrust, and they shared some stats, and I thought it just struck me. They showed that institutional trust is at the lowest that it's ever been, and according to the Alderman Trust Barometer, 61% of respondents in that particular survey had said that they trusted business leaders more than they trusted institutional leaders or government leaders. And the barometer showed that 61% said they trusted business leaders, as I said, but my employer, in inverted commas, holds the most trusted position currently around the world in 2023 at 77% of employees trusting their employer. And I just thought that was an incredible stat, in that we've gone through so much. There's so much that we haven't done right and we haven't done well, but that this trust is speaking to a huge leadership opportunity for business. And I just wanted to put that in. It really, I thought those were mind-blowing stats.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are mind-blowing stats. Great. Well, it was such a pleasure to chat with you. I'm so sorry that I'm not going to get a chance to meet you in person in Madrid, but maybe when I'm in Cape Town in April, we can meet in person or at a future IWEC.
And when you're there, I promise you will hear the South Africans. They're a rowdy bunch, and they're intelligent and sharp as a whip and funny. And but you'll see them; they'll be there.
How many do you have coming from your area?
I think there are about 10.
Oh, that's fantastic. Fantastic.